Hey everybody, so today we're going to be talking about something that has kind of been driving me a little crazy recently, and for those that are in the graph space, maybe you feel the same way, or maybe you're like on the bandwagon and you're like, man, I'm so glad we have a label for this thing where we didn't have one before. And that label is context graph. So for those that have been around for a little bit of time in the graph space, and if you're not, welcome. Hello. I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos here. But that's what a graph is. It's context. It adds a lot of context. And the big reason that this label now exists, so again, this is just my opinion because it's a recent explosion of people talking about context graphs, is we've been using graphs with AI to add more context to AI since LLMs really exploded, and we figured out that they hallucinate a lot and they don't know much about your specific business or your specific use case. I remember hearing about this problem and how graphs were solving it way back at the Knowledge Graph conference right after the LLM hit with OpenAI. So this is not new. I think the hype is because we all now have a label, and some people like to sell on labels. I think that's a big part of it. Again, that's not everybody, but that's a thing, right? So keep that in mind. But if you were wondering, like, why is this different than a normal knowledge graph? And the answer would be, it's really not. Now, there are certain elements that are more useful in what would be considered a context graph. I actually have a whole video here talking about why and how knowledge graph is used in AI. And I say a lot about context in that video, but I don't use the label context graph because at that point, it wasn't really that popular yet. So I'm making this video mostly to go through what are the things that already existed in the knowledge graph space that are now being, I can't even say commandeered, because like a context graph is still a knowledge graph, but is maybe being associated with the concept of a context graph. Goodness, that was a tongue twister. So that's what we're going to go through today, and I'm going to put some examples here up on the screen so you can kind of get a feel for what the data model or ontology would look like, because there's a lot of things here that might be new to you if you're not familiar with the knowledge graph space. These are getting into ontology constraints and time series, and do you need RDF star, or do you need reification, or should you use a label property graph? Can you use them both together? Yes, you absolutely can. Whole video on that I did a million years ago. So don't be confused if you start to see this stuff showing up only in the ontology RDF space, or you hear label property graph folks talking about it in a different way. You can use both. Okay, so let's go and get started in what is the deal with this context graph stuff. What is it? That's what we'll start with, and then we'll jump into examples of the different characteristics that live in the graph space that are primarily associated with the context graph kind of phenomenon label. You get the gist. So when you are using an LLM, it doesn't have a lot of context about you and your business, because it might have a lot from the open web if your business is a pretty big one, but you don't know if that's all correct either, because it's all coming from the open web. So what a lot of people are doing are creating context graphs, now that we have the name for it, based on their internal logic, so that if they have a chatbot for their internal, product people or legal people or customer service or whoever it might be, they can have chats with the chatbot, and it has valid answers. Notice I just said the word valid for your business and for the context of your business. And so what does that mean? Well, in different businesses, you define customer differently than I do. You have different rules. For instance, maybe you are only allowed to describe a customer if they are somebody that has made a purchase, and that purchase was made locally, because I don't know, you have some weird business rule around that. Or let's say you really need to follow compliance rules and be able to audit what the AI is doing and make sure that it's following the rules and regulations that you in your industry have to follow. Well, if you don't know what that AI is making decisions on or what it's using for its responses, you can't audit it. It's non-deterministic, which is bad. That's a lot of risk and you could get in a lot of trouble. So having this audit trail and being able to have valid, meaning it is valid according to your business logic and your business rules, and that it is going through the proper sequence, because, sequence is not something that LLMs do. They actually can do them really sequence of things really well, but if you have a sequence that's not effective and you don't tell the LLM the context it needs to know that this has to happen even if you think it's ineffective, LLM, well, it's going to skip over that because it sees it as ineffective. It wants to get to the answer as quickly as possible with the highest confidence. So it could actually bypass things that you really need the LLM to adhere to from a sequence perspective. And, when it comes to validation, especially with business, something could be valid at the time that it was retrieved, and it could be invalid now for various reasons. That's something that you really need to be careful of when you're feeding data in, because there's this time element of there's versions. Can I tell who made the change to that thing so that now the LLM is all wacky because it thinks that we live in I don't know, we live on Pluto instead of Earth. I don't know, you did something weird and somebody didn't realize they were mucking around in your knowledge graph. These are weird things that you don't want to be surprised with when you are using AI at scale for some pretty hefty business things. And that's a really big reason that people are getting into context graphs. So let's jump in to the first example, and that is those business rules. So I mentioned one where in order to be considered a customer, you have to have at least made one purchase. So that's what this looks like. It's a really, really common one. And I'm going to use some product examples here just because most people can resonate with that even if they don't work in a place that has products, but most places have some kind of product, even if it's a service. So that's why I'm going with that example. But if you're interested in other examples for this, let me know. So another one that you will find, there's a lot of things in the ontology space for ontology constraints. And I swear I did a video on those. If I did, I'll link it down below. When you have ontology constraints, which is RDF land, you can have data constraints in the labeled property graph space, but it's not as native, in my opinion, as you see in ontology land. But honestly, going back to, you can use either. You can use a lot of different validation techniques in the labeled property graph space. It's just not built in to what it is from the data model's perspective. So when you have a domain in the ontology space, you're saying that these elements are only valid if you belong to the same domain. So an example here is you can have the relation expiration date if you are in the food category of the graph, if you are in the domain of food services or food products, but you shouldn't be able to use expiration date if you're in the electronics piece of the product catalog, because they don't have them. That's not valid. So those are some examples of domain. I'm not going to go through all of the different types, by the way. All right, and so when we're getting into sequence, there is the sequence of events, and honestly, a lot of that is triggered by time. So lots of things we're going to talk about with time here in a second. But there also are things that you can do with event modeling. And so event modeling is where you have to kind of define what the boundaries are of when these things are happening and when there is a cause and effect throughout the graph. And there's some different techniques for that. Again, I'm not going to go over all of that in this video. Might have a video later on it though, because a lot of people are interested in it, but I'll pop up some examples here on the screen. Graphs are really good with network, right? Like where all these things are interconnecting, but they don't always do a great job. Again, not always. They typically have some elements of time, but they show up in different ways. So I'll go through a few of those different ways here. You can also use quads. So instead of having a triple, you'll have another element on each of the triples that is documenting a timestamp or a validation, right? So you say this thing is valid if you want the AI that's retrieving these things for, generating what it's doing. And usually, again, that's using RAG in its process of taking that knowledge graph data, sticking it into RAG, and then that is then used to reference when it's doing the generation. If you have versioning on your data. So it's usually part of like the system, and it's tracking like what the versioning is. Annotation data, you have metadata essentially. Now, validation, honestly, a lot of these there's elements of these throughout all of the things that I'm mentioning here. So validation is, did it comply with the constraints? Did it comply with the data governance rules? Did it follow the correct sequence? That is validation. And it can be on any of the constraints, any of the rules, any of the additional logic that you place on your data. Any of that can be shown as validation. And it can be, do I have enough data to support whatever this thing is, right? So if you're doing something in the legal sense, right? Like, do you have enough evidence in your graph or in your case or in all the other case law to support this claim, right? So these are claims, and can they be validated? So these are things that show up in insurance claims, like all kinds of things where there is a claim on something that you then need to back up with evidence. So that's another example where validation shows up in the graph space, specifically for, if it's not valid, the AI shouldn't use it, right? Which is a great way to make sure your AI doesn't go off the rails way before anything in AI starts to happen. And the last thing I'll say is, bringing in that context of similarity, or, that network analysis where you can do lots of graph algorithms to figure out what is the shortest path between all these like things that are commonly requested from my AI. Or here are all the areas that my AI tends to hallucinate. Let me grab all those elements from my graph, right? And then I create a graph embedding of how those things are related. And then my graph has a speedier way to then serve up to the LLM what the LLM needs for answering a given request. So those are pretty common for really large graphs that have to be kind of sectioned out into bite-sized pieces, or, back to my first video that I mentioned that I made, the case for small knowledge graphs is these are tailor-made for the AI. So everything I've talked about thus far, you can use outside of AI, right? Like validation of data. Awesome, great, love that for you, no matter what you're doing. So in all of this stuff, if you can prove that this information is valid and specific to your business, because that's what you're adding into your knowledge graph to then supplement what the LLM is reacting to, or that it knows in its pre-training, you're going to get better responses. And so that is a huge reason why so many people are talking about context graphs. And as we just showed, you probably have some of these elements already kicking around if you already have a knowledge graph. So be careful. Make sure that you validate the data in your knowledge graph if you are using one that was not originally meant for AI. Make sure you think about how big your graph is and what the querying across your graph is going to look like when AI is integrated into the processes that you're trying to work on. Because you might need to think about, pre-calculating, right? Like creating those graph embeddings on things that you don't need to use the entire graph to get. And yeah, this all is helping with explainable AI too, because this information not only makes your AI responses better, but you can then start to look at, why did the AI make the decisions or come up with the responses that it did? What rules from your knowledge graph that were valid and what processes did it use according to the sequence of things, or what versions of things that it used from the graph. And again, you can make sure that your AI is only grabbing certain things from certain versions or certain validations or whatever it might be. So it adds a lot more stuff or context for your LLM to then retrieve the best stuff for you. And then you can explain it because it's coming from your data that can then be more deterministic. You know exactly what was used because it was retrieved from your knowledge graph, and you helped dictate under which conditions that would happen. All right, so with that, I want to thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time.